Hello all and welcome back to science class for today. For today's science class, we'll be talking about water cycle. I believe we all know what water means. So water cycle is just talking about how water evaporates and condense, evaporation and condensation of water. Here we'll be talking about evaporation and condensation of water, how water evaporates and how it condenses back. Now we are going to be asking and answering some questions one after the other. We start with evaporation. What is evaporation? Evaporation is simply when water turns into vapor and rises up. I repeat, evaporation is simply when water turns into vapor and rises up. Just like the water vapor you see when you're boiling your water, that's evaporation of water. Now, question 2, what is condensation? In condensation, the vapor cools down and turns back to water. In condensation again, the vapor cools down and turns back to water. The third question is, what is water cycle? What is water cycle process? Water cycle process is just the process that involves the evaporation and condensation of water continuously. That is water cycle. Let's talk about evaporation and condensation process again. Firstly, evaporation process. In evaporation process, the water changes from liquid to gas. I repeat, in evaporation process, the water changes from liquid to gas and it rises upward. Now, in condensation process, the gas that have risen up cools down and it turns back to liquid. I repeat, in condensation process, the gas that has risen up cools down and it turns back to liquid. That means it becomes water again. Now, I want you to keep in mind that in evaporation, water turns into vapor when heated. Remember, in evaporation, water turns into vapor when heated. Just like you can see in this boiling water, the water is turning into vapor and it is rising upward. Let's go through the water cycle processes again. We started with evaporation. We said in evaporation, water turns into vapor and rises upward. In evaporation, water turns into vapor and it rises upward like this. It goes upward. In condensation, vapor cools to form water droplets. In condensation, the water that has risen up during evaporation cools down and it forms water droplets. Now we have what we call precipitation. I call it what again? Precipitation. Water falls back to earth as rain. So when the water falls back onto the earth and you have rain, that is a process called precipitation. So precipitation is a process whereby water falls back to earth as rain. Now we have what we call collection. Collection is a process whereby water gathers in rivers and lakes. The process of water gathering in rivers and lakes is called collection. Thank you all for listening and thank you for learning about water cycle in science for today. I believe you have learned a lot about the process of water and how water changes form. Thank you all and see you in the next science class. Goodbye.